number of people opened our house to an ungodly number of people. And there were times, I mean, we operate, or we would stitch people, we have stitched people up on the kitchen table. Because we didn't really turn anyone away. And when we got started with the care center, that was an even bigger. And really, you know, we went down, your mother
was carrying you when we were building the
well,
care center.
Grandma was in the hospital at the seminar that we had Arthur Jones there. Arthur Jones was the founder of Nautilus. And she was in the hospital. And at the table that night, Arthur got to talking to me, and he said he wanted me to come and work for him.
Down in Florida?
Yeah, wanted to join him down there, and he would make me a millionaire and all this stuff. And I remember leaving the Ramada Inn that night, and to come back and see Letty before I went home. I think that was, anyway, I missed the cutoff because my mind was elsewhere. Anyway, when I finally did tell her about joining Arthur, it was an exciting thing. And I was going to join him. The clinic talked me out of taking a sabbatical rather than quitting and going down there. So we took off.
But he flew us down first.
Oh yeah, he flew us down.
Right out of the hospital, he flew us down.
Flew us down there, and we spent a couple days. Arthur thought, or Letty thought Arthur's wife was his daughter.
She picked us up at the airport.
So we didn't get off to a very good start, but
She was his fourth wife, and she understood.
she was a nice lady, nice girl. Anyway,
Compliment.
She was young.
yeah, so we decided to go on a sabbatical. We rented a place in DeLand.
Is that here in Florida?
Yeah, that's in Florida, North Orlando. And that's where Arthur had his research area, and that's where he had his alligators and his everything else, his snakes. So we went down there, but it became clear. Then John and Ed came down with us,
John went to school there. He was in high school.
enrolled in school, and we didn't stay the full 3 months because it became clear that Arthur was really unbalanced.
How so?
Well,
Eccentric.
he was a Howard Hughes type, and he was. I mean, he was a.
He thought everybody was out to get him or wanted something from him,
He
but
was
he,
paranoid.
you know, he could tell Grandpa wasn't like that.
To a large degree, I'm sure that's true. There was probably a lot of people who did want something out of
He
him.
came to
Well,
our
everybody
house.
did. We didn't want
He
anything.
came to our house once and spent a weekend with us. He and his pilot.
Oh yeah.
His
He flew to
co-pilot.
our house. He and his pilot, and he left our house to go pick up a 727. I mean, you know that. People don't believe when we say things like that, but that was the truth.
And I think he felt a sanctuary at a place where he felt safe and people didn't want something from
See,
him.
we weren't yes people. You know, he'd say something, and I'd say, "You're full of shit." You know, that's not right.
His parents were both doctors.
Yeah.
Medical doctors. Had a daughter
And
going
he
to
knew a
medical
lot
school
of
in
medicine.
Mexico.
He knew a lot of medicine. But anyway, we turned that down and decided that we were going to go back. Arthur called me, but he always had, he always, we either met at McDonald's or IHOP, and he had an entourage with him. These were millionaires that were, you know, all wanted something, or all, you know, were involved with him in some way. And he had a foul mouth, but he called me about 10:30 or so, and I think I was in bed or getting ready for bed, to meet him at IHOP or McDonald's, I forget which one. So I met him there. And he pulled me aside and we went and sat together. And he said, well, he was going to let me go back home, as if he had anything to say about it. I was already, we were packed, ready to go. And then he made this offer to me about equipment. He knew what my hopes were to start this sports medicine thing and to work on training necks and making them bigger and safer, and knees. So he gave me knee equipment and he gave me neck equipment. He didn't want it back, but he didn't want anyone to know that he'd given it, because he thought if he did that, everybody would be after him
He said, I'm not a philanthropist.
to give equipment. Well, we're talking about a lot of money. He would have it delivered, and all of that. And I went home and woke Letty up and told her about it, and asked her. We decided that I was going to take $10,000 as seed money for this project, because we knew that you had to have seed money. You had to be able to act. We drove home, and to show you the sequence of events are so remarkable and serendipitous that it's hard to believe the sequence of events. But as part of this, he would take our coaches down, and at his expense, and they would train our coaches on how to use the equipment. Well, I still had our apartment in DeLand, so the idea was that our coaches would go down and stay there, and over the next 3 or 4 days be trained by Arthur. But I got home the night of the school board meeting. That night, the school board meeting was scheduled for 7 or whatever, and I knew that 2 things had happened. A very good college classmate of mine,
From Wabash?
from Wabash, who ended up out in California. He was a physicist. He had majored in physics.
Okay.
And a hell of a nice guy. And he had come to the University of Illinois, looking for people, or, you know.
He had gotten his PhD there.
Yeah, anyway, he was at our house. Also at our house was the principal of Muhammad, who was staying in our basement.
Why was that?
He was divorced and needed a place to stay. We had a couple, that happened. We had 2 or 3 people live in our basement. Anyway, so I had the principal go get this guy, and I was going to go to the school board. Well, I went down to the hen house, because I knew that the principal, the superintendent would be there, and several members of the school board. Well, I had resigned from the school board, but, you know, I still had enough pride. They all knew me and all that. So I asked if I could speak to the school board and present everything was just still in my head. It was nothing written down about this clinic. What were we talking about? Well, we were talking about a clinic, and I had, at that time, Carl had moved a trailer out to Muhammad, and that's
Right.
where Carl's clinic was. But they had built this building, and the trailer was out on a farm north of town. So I said, well, what I'll do, my thought was to get that trailer, move it in next to the high school, and that would be the center. So, anyway, I had to meet the school board to get permission to do all this. There was a basketball game, so we stayed for the basketball game, and then my friend from college came and sat with me. We went to the school board together. The school board agreed to hear me, and I laid these plans out as if, you know, it all came to me as if it was that I had sit down and written all this out, and I had, you know, it was all off the top of my head. And I said, well, that was on a Tuesday. I said, we'll meet with the coaches on Wednesday. And I got permission from the school board that our coaches could go down there
To Florida.
to Florida to land. So we met on Wednesday in our living room. That's where Bobby Hall came up with the name, the Center for Athletic Injury Research, CARE. We talked to the attorney, school attorney was there, the blind attorney from Muhammad. We would make the corporation go through, make it a tax exempt, not-for-profit corporation. It would be called Center for Athletic Injury Research. And that's, and several other things. And the equipment would be sent, or we'd get trained on it, and then the equipment would be sent to us. We had permission if I could get the trailer. Well, at that time, Carl was paying $50 to $100 a month rent to leave the trailer in this muddy field, you know.
Right.
Store it. Well, we met there Wednesday night. The coach decided what coaches were going. Decided on started the papers on the organization, CARE, tax exempt.
This is Wednesday.
This is Wednesday. This is after we drove most of the night to get back there on Tuesday.
Okay.
And Darrell Fulton, who was the principal at that time, was the guy staying in our basement. Well, Dick Hickman, who was the physicist, he went on, had to get back to the University of Illinois, so he went back to the University of Illinois. He subsequently died of a heart attack, but that was Wednesday. Got permission to send him down there. Wednesday, Thursday, I went to the clinic.
The trailer. Or the.
The trailer.
That was
And
the original Muhammad Carl Clinic.
I said to Ken Bash, you know, if you let me use this trailer, and I said, we won't charge you the $50 a month rent that you pay now to store it, but if you want the trailer back, we would guarantee that we would have it back in its original shape anytime you want it. And he said, well, you know how much it would cost to move that trailer? I went downstairs and I called Huddleston with Park Hill Mobile Home.
Okay.
Move it for nothing.
Meh.
So we had to, and then of course they couldn't really turn me down. And I went to the board.
They were out of excuses.
They were out of excuses. And so the next step was to get the trailer moved, which we did eventually. And next we processed the papers and put the money in the bank. Got the guys down there trained, and eventually the equipment showed up out of Cincinnati. Guys connected with the Cincinnati Bengals hauled that equipment. They were studs, and they hauled it all in. That was all the neck equipment. You know, we had 5 or 6 machines for the neck and a couple machines for the knee. And we had to gut that trailer and had to do work on it. We got everything in there and set up for business. So by the time the summer came around, our kids were training there with on Nautilus, and we started seeing patients there. So that was the start of care.
Now, when did the building get built?
Well, let's see, we were in the building a couple of years. And
You mean the trailer?
in the trailer, yeah. And we, at that time, you see, we were stuck because they, when we originally thought about building a building, the law was such that they would not sell us any land by the school.
Mm.
So we ended up saying, all right, in the interim, they had bought this land that the present high school is at.
Mm-hmm.
And we suggested or drew plans up that we would put it there. That the school would own the building. We would own everything in the building. But we would put the building up and the school would then
Own it.
own it. And a lot of people didn't want us to do that, but you know, you have to be where the kids are, was my argument. And that argument sustained us. And let's see, I we hired a guy, and I have this all in book form.
Oh yeah.
You probably haven't seen it, but we hired a guy to write the story of CARE. Anyway, Bob Clay, who was made bricks and cement finisher and whatnot. And all these things came together, and he agreed to supervise the construction. See, when we first started, for give you an example, the school architect, you know, they were building a new school. And
Oh, I'm all too familiar with that building.
all right. Well, I forget how this came about, but he didn't think that we'd get off the ground with this building, but made a bet that if we did, he would, you know, design the building for nothing. Well, of course we did, and he then had to design the building. He did some work on it. Bob Clay, who is a really interesting guy, ramrodded the construction care center.
Ramrodded?
Ramrodded, you know, really oversaw everything. Because you're talking about people that didn't know their ass from a hole in the ground. I mean, and that's when we started recruiting the help from the labor union, Josh's grandfather,
Whose grandfather?
Courtney's,
Oh, okay.
her fiance's grandfather was the head of the labor union, Gene Johnson, who became good friends and who really helped us a lot in getting the other unions involved in helping us put this building together, because we built that building for about $100,000. You know, which, I mean, you're talking an 8,500 square foot building with 2 racquetball courts and, you know.
And there were clinic rooms in there too?
Oh yeah, clinic rooms, we had a bathroom inside, and we built, you know, if you know how that building is now.
Weren't you ever in the medical? Well, you were when you were little, I know, but.
I only remember the Nautilus machines and the racquetball courts. That's all I That's all I remember.
Well, adjacent to that, we had the locker rooms, you know, we were gonna sell memberships.
Those I remember as well.
And, you know, at that time, we didn't, before the building, the only thing we had out at the football field were porta potties, 2 porta potties. Otherwise, people had to go to the high school, and the administration didn't want people traipsing into the high school.
And I remember they had the concession stands there
It was
too.
down, yeah, where the high school was,
That was in the garage.
in the garage at the high school.
No, it was in the garage at the care center.
But before that,
Oh,
it was down where the shop was.
Right.
Shop area. Well, we designed it so that our garage would be the concession stand. It opened up into the football field.
Yeah.
We made plans to put the restrooms right there too. That opened up, the door would open up both ways, but for football games, the door would open into the restrooms. And we had, I don't know, we had 3 or 4 urinals and a couple stools and sinks, lavatories for the men, and 4 or 5 toilets, stalls for the females. And to show you how dumb, to show you one of the things that we had to put up with, we get the building about finished. And I had talked to people about giving us all the hardware for the bathrooms,
Mm-hmm.
We had the space built and all that. But putting it in was expensive. And those stalls and the doors and the lavatory and the urinals, that stuff is expensive. And I had run out of money. But we knew that it cost the school district over $1,000 a year for the porta potties.
For the Porta Labs, sure.
Porta potties for the football games. So I went to the school board and I said, look, you're gonna pay, I need $5,000. I had people donating all this stuff, and we would have it all put in and everything for about $5,000. I said, you're gonna spend that over the next 5 years, and we would have this ready to go. Heated bathrooms with sinks. It wouldn't stink, you could wash your hands, all that stuff. And I said, I don't care if you do it or not, because we had a separate private bathroom in where the examining area was
Right.
that I would be able to use. Anyway, we had 2 school board members voted down.
well, they were.
I said, all I'm asking is you're gonna pay this $5,000 out anyway. You give us that $5,000 now, and I'll get this all ready for the football season.
Yeah.
Well, we had these 2 assholes vote against it, which,
And that's what they were negative, they didn't.
never made any sense whatsoever. But 5 other members on the school board had prevailed.
Was it a majority vote?
It was a majority vote, so we got the $5,000 and we put the bathrooms in. And it worked beautifully. To this day, it works beautifully.
Oh yeah, no, every high school football game I ever went to.
And the concession stand worked beautifully. We had that, I don't know, like when we got the caravan.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that
Yeah.
truck? Well, it just so happened that the guy who ran,
A Plymouth Dodge dealership.
Yeah.
What's his
anyway, he was married to the secretary for the foundation CEO. And we got to be good friends, and I went and asked her if she would arrange a meeting with her husband, and she was happy to do that. He lived out in Lincolnshire area. And Letty and I, we drove out there one night to see him. And what I was hoping for is that he would help us with a deal to lease a van that we could have a mobile unit.
Even a used one.
Yeah.
For diagnosis and
Well, and people, we would go to football
It was
games.
a
You know,
train
I was
ride.
using my van, which we
It was a
couldn't
train
get all the
room. We had
equipment
all the
in.
equipment in there for injuries.
You know, we couldn't examine kids or anything. Anyway, so we go there. And this guy,
Dick Shelby.
Dick Shelby, What was his wife's?
Shelby Motors, that was I'm sure it's still there.
What was his wife's name?
Yeah, Shelby Motors. Yeah.
Mhm.
His wife's,
Shelby. Oh, I don't remember her.
was it Karen?
Karen, yeah.
And there's an interesting story with Karen that I have to tell you about.
Okay.
It's a side story. Karen was was sort of a paralegal and was working with an attorney in Champaign at the time. And this attorney, there was a doctor in a rural town north, up around Gilman or somewhere up there. But it was between Champaign and Lafayette. The son, there was a son driving his sports car, missed the curve, went into the porch of this house, had a severe head injury, open head injury, had brain coming out.
Ugh.
Ended up at this small hospital, I don't know which small town, I forget which small town it was. But the GP who practiced there, they called him in. And here the GP has this kid with his severe head injury. Anyway, they didn't transfer him for a day or two. They had to stabilize him
Right, before you can move him.
before he could move him. And that was before the helicopters and stuff like that. And they finally moved him up to Northwestern. And of course, when they got him up there, the assholes that took the case over, their first thing is, well, if we had gotten him in time, he would, we could have done this and that. So anyway, the kid's dad was a big-time attorney in Lafayette, and so he sued.
The GP.
And he sued the GP and the local hospital and all of that. And Karen was a paralegal for this attorney. And he wanted to go over the case, the pathology and all of that. So they came out to the house one night. And we stayed up, well, Letty had gone to bed. I mean, we were in our living room till 2 or 3. It was 2 o'clock in the morning at least. And he had all these medical records from Northwestern.
Right.
And from the local hospital and all that. And it became very clear to, that actually the people at Northwestern, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. They had infectious disease guys, the neurosurgeons, the internist, and all of that. And the big question was, one of the big questions was meningitis.
Well, right, with an open head injury and.
Yeah. Well, they originally had brain leakage.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Meningitis. How about encephalitis?
And meningitis, that just means it's inflammation.
Right.
That doesn't mean that it's an infection. And the question came down to how many polys there was in the blood, in the cerebral spinal fluid and all. Anyway. So, Karen and I, that's how I met her. And I was able, the role I played was to talk in terms of terminology that the lawyers could understand and Karen could understand, and they would prepare the defense.
You doing interpretation stuff?
I didn't testify or anything. All I did was read the doctor's notes and say, this is what, and this made sense to me, and was the doctor at fault? Hell no. He did the best he could, for crying out. You had to understand. You had to be in that position to understand what the hell he had to face.
Well, right.
Anyway, as it turned out, the suit went on and the doctor won. He was found not guilty and all of that. And there was a big relief. And then Karen went on to be the secretary for the foundation, Carl Foundation.
Okay.
And the CEO. And she went on to do that for many years. And that's when, at that time, she was divorced and she was married to this Dick Shelby. So we met at his apartment out in Lincolnshire. Karen and Dick Shelby, and I didn't know Dick Shelby from anybody. I had no idea. But I knew he had this dealership.
Well, we bought, I don't know if it was before or after we bought cars from him.
At that time?
Well, that's where I bought the Jeep. I think that was after.
That'd have been after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It still says Shelby Motors on it.
we learned at that time that Dick Shelby was not, he had sons that were even participating in athletics, but he wasn't a booster, and he hadn't given anything, and he wasn't a big fan, he just wasn't interested in that.
Right.
So we sat down and talked to him, and laid out to what I had in mind. What did you want? And this is what, and I laid out that, I was hoping to get a lease of a used van or something and use it. Well, we got through talking, and he said, well, you go down to the lot tomorrow morning and pick out whatever van you want. Whatever van you want. Well, we were so excited, we went
That night.
that night, went down and walked around, and we saw this big thing, and the next day I went down. He said, well, which one you want, and whatever, and I told him, and I didn't think, here's the keys.
Wow.
We also later bought the small caravan from him,
Yeah.
See, I remember the small one.
the red one.
Because the big one was kept at the center, right? Or was it kept at your house?
Oh, occasionally we have it at the house.
Yeah.
Because I remember the small red one was at your house more
See,
often.
we had to build the cab so that we could put a table in there.
Right.
And then we had the thing lettered with the CARE logo and all
Yeah.
that.
Put shelves in there, we customized it.
I mean, he just gave me the keys.
Pretty amazing.
Grandpa had a power of persuasion though.
But I didn't really,
Well, you didn't realize it, but
I didn't really,
people
what
just
the
took
thing
me.
what you have to understand is we had a product here. A product backed up by a lot of volunteers that were, that had done
Your mom should remember all that.
Oh yeah, my dad remembers it too. He remembers the diving contest you guys had and all kinds of stuff.
And that was done on the spur of the moment. You've got to understand this.
It's like it was all meant to be, that's how you feel about it.
Well, you wonder whether you had an angel on your shoulder directing this and opening the doors and giving ideas and people responding to good, because I think we got down to the point where, give you an example, the owner of the television station what was his name?
Her name, Mark,
No, that was the old guy.
Myers.
Yeah, August Meyer, multimillionaire, and he had told these people many times, Carl and Mercy, and Christy, about how much money he was going to leave them. I mean, he owned the television stations in San Diego
Sure.
and the radio station, or the television station locally. And I went to him to get some help. We needed, because Carl Foundation, the Carl Hospital had said that if they would match money,
Whatever we could raise.
was it 100,000 or 50,000?
I don't know, I thought they gave us, I don't know, we still have that check though.
Yeah, I've got the picture of that. Anyway, I think it was 50,000, because I think when we reached 50,000, we got that other 50,000, that meant we had
I think it might have been
100,000.
100,000.
Anyway, I think the total was 100,000. Anyway, my memory goes to hell, and
Well, it was a lot of money anyway.
so I go talk to August. Now here's here's a tight son of a bitch. And the thing that finally pissed me off enough was, he kept leading me on, and he even drove out to Muhammad. I met him in Muhammad. And we went around Muhammad, looking at what we were thinking about doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in my car. And the thing that ticked me off was I spent that Saturday morning with him, and I missed Eddie's game or something.
Okay.
So we finally drove around, and he, him hard, sort of left it up in the air that he was going to help us. The fact of the matter was he really had no plan on helping us at all. But he left, kept us hanging, kept me hanging. And we got closer and closer to where we had to where we were going to have this roast and try to get enough, reach the 50,000 so that I would get the 50 and have 100.
Right.
Well, I finally reached the point. The last time I met him, we talked, and well, if you raise this, I would give $1,000. And I said, that's when I reached, and I said, look, you need it worse than we do. That was it.
So much for him.
And I went back that afternoon because we were going to have the roast the next day. And I was really discouraged. And I had collected a lot of money, checks, and I was ready to give it all back. We were not going to go ahead with the building. This old car drives up, and this mother gets out, and she had a son named Muhammad, and they brought me $10.
They lived out at the mobile home parks.
They believed in this and what we were trying to do, and appreciated it. And that $10 meant a lot to them. I offered her tickets and all that, but she gave me the $10. And that was the impetus that, well, we're going to go ahead. We'll go ahead and put this together and see if we can
Keep trying.
Keep trying. And that weekend we had the roast and toast, and I had this $10 check, and I told people about it. Well, it just so happened that people, we had the all the events out at our house. We raised $16,000 in cash. Everything, hot dogs were a quarter.
Yeah.
Candy bar, everything was a quarter, and we had all that stuff going on. But we had $16,000 in cash, in silver and dollar bills to take to the bank.
Sheriff's deputy took an in or something.
So anyway,
Policeman or something.
then we had this roast and toast, and we had people come and give us carpet, God only knows.
Different services to
But
build.
Not only did they give us carpet, they laid it.
But that evening, the foundation came, Chuck Van Voors, who was the president of Carl Constable and the foundation.
Give me 1 second.